sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never
Good cheese.
learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered.
Won't be there anymore.
Right.
You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I will
New ventures are always scary.
till I'm melting
Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
tomorrow. But the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever till I'm melting in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Cliff from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening. Welcome to Season 2 of Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty give each other a film to watch and talk about them in detail. Some episodes will include a special guest. Making Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty talk to people they have worked with and discuss their experiences on set. Here we're back.
We're back.
Back again.
Back again.
Are you planning
Once
to
again, I
repeat
think I
everything
had something. What are you going to say? I don't know.
I said, are you going to repeat everything I say? It's gonna be
I
weird.
thought I had
It's gonna be
something.
a weird show.
I thought I had something clever to say at the beginning once again. Didn't write it down, and yeah, well, maybe it'll happen next week. It's Talking Pondo.
That's right. Season 2, episode 15, I believe.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, is overall episode
51.
51.
Yeah, 51.
So you got that, reciprocal thing going there.
I hope our listeners are proud of us that we're keeping up with this now. That, it's not like, I don't know, is the make, I don't know, talking something.
The numbering system's important for us because that way we know what we're publishing. That's really what
That's literally it.
helps with that immensely. So,
That's literally why we keep track. Otherwise, we'd just throw them out and call them Talking Pondo, and then just the title of the movies, call it a day.
mm-hmm.
Speaking of, we had 2 movies this week, didn't we?
Wow, we watched movies. It's crazy, but it did happen again. We watched 2 more movies, and yeah, well, I think it's safe to say that both of us are kind of dipping into some of our back catalog of ideas of movies we wanted to put on the show or things that we've been picking around since we started doing the pod. And now that we finished all of our seasonal stuff, we are kind of skyrocketing back through the list. And so I gave you our first Richard Linklater movie.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting choice for the first Linklater movie.
Which was his third film, Before Sunrise from 95. And then you gave me a movie that was 40 years older than that from 1955.
Mm-hmm.
The Night of the Hunter.
Night of the Hunter.
It's Criterion Week here on Talking
Both
Pondo. I think that was going to be my intro. You were going to go, we're back. And I was going to say, it's Criterion Week here on Talking Pondo. Something like that, yeah. Because both
I guess we could start over if you want. Hey, we're back, Marty.
And we're back. Yeah.
And we're back.
Speaking of starting over, at the time of recording this, we had just released that Breaking Away episode. And I listened back to it, and then at the end of it, we revealed that we had to record the whole episode over again.
Right.
I was like,
Yep.
oh yeah, I kind of forgot that we had to do that. So
Well, luckily that's the only time so far, knocking on a lot of wood, that we've done that.
we're real podcasters. We forgot to hit record once, so
I listened to that Breaking Away episode after it came out, and I thought, that really is a good fucking movie.
Yeah.
I really liked that movie quite a bit, and I think people should definitely watch it. I feel like it's a forgotten gem. Like you said, it's in the family section. What the hell is it doing in the family section? This is an awesome movie about kind of coming of age and growing up, and and figuring out who you are, and that type of thing. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it gets bumped into the tween thing,
Yeah, I don't know. It feels more grown up to me than that.
Right.
What do I know?
No, it's
but that's not. But let's not.
categorize.
I don't need to rehash Breaking Away, right? We've got two new movies on
The
this.
segue is movies are hard to categorize sometimes, and that movie's hard to categorize. In today's movies, you could argue, where do these belong?
Yeah. Night of the Hunter for sure. Before Sunrise, yeah. I've got some thoughts on both of those, and I'm sure you do too.
Well,
which one do you want to
start? Yeah, what do you want to start with? I don't mind this week.
Let's start with Hunter first because it leads into some of my comments for Before Sunrise.
Okay.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
All right, so 1955's Night of the Hunter. This film is in black and white, considered to be kind of classic noir, if I'm not mistaken. Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, and directed by Charles Lofton. And this
Shelley Winters again.
Shelley Winters again, doing her best. Oh, and Lillian Gish too, which was I'd forgotten about that. But Lofton, this is the only picture Lofton directed. And after having watched it, I would have really liked to have seen another film by him. Self-proclaimed preacher marries a gullible widow whose young children are reluctant to tell him where their real dad hid the $10,000 he'd stolen in a robbery.
My daddy told me not to talk to you.
So, storyline. It's the Great Depression. In the process of robbing a bank of $10,000, Ben Harper kills two people. Peter Graves. And this is Peter Graves' actual first unsolved mystery. Before he is captured, Ben is able to convince his son John and his daughter Pearl not to tell anyone, including their mother, where he hid the money, and he hid it in Pearl's favorite toy, which is a doll that she carries everywhere with her. Ben is captured, tried, and convicted, and is sentenced to death. Before he's executed, Ben is in the state penitentiary with a cellmate, a man by the name of Harry Powell, a self-professed man of the cloth who's really a con man and a murderer, who swindles lonely women, primarily rich widows, of their money before he kills them. Harry does whatever he can unsuccessfully to find out the location of the $10,000 from Ben. Can't do it. So after Ben's execution, Harry decides that Willa will be his next mark, figuring that someone in the family knows where the money is hidden. Despite vowing not to remarry, Willa ends up being prey for Harry's outward evangelicalism. She is a pious woman who feels the need to atone for her sins, which led to Ben doing what he did, essentially as Harry presents himself as the preacher who worked at the prison and provided salvation to Ben before his death. So Harry quickly figures out that John and Pearl know where the money is. Conversely, John doesn't trust Harry, although Pearl loves him. And John, who first tries not to show to Harry that he indeed does know where the money is, and constantly reminds a more trusting Pearl of their promise to their now deceased father. John and Pearl become more desperate in evading Harry's failed threats, and it eventually capitulates into a night of violence and them on the run from him. So that's a terrible storyline synopsis from IMDb. Jesus. Yeah, that's kind of basically
really accurate to the first 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a whole other movie starts. The kids go down the boat on the raft. They're on the boat getting away from the bad guy, and then they run into a whole new group of characters, which is Lillian Gish, and she takes them in, and then of course one day Robert Mitchum shows up looking for that money.
Well, and he's following him the whole that. So I'll start off by saying I loved this movie. I absolutely fucking loved it. I thought it was fucking brilliant. It has a menace and a sinisterness to it that's Mitchum is really great in it. It also has some weird moments of comedy, dark comedy in there. I like the fact that the kids are, while they're kids, they're not stupid, naive. You know, John's pretty smart for a kid his age. Um, anyway, uh, so right away, like when Mitchum's driving in the beginning and they got that old school rear projection going as he's driving in the car, I'm just like, yeah,
Way better than Axel F.
absolutely. That was my exact thought. I thought of you bitching about the car in Axel F, and I thought, just do rear projection. It
Why
still
improve on
sells.
perfection? Yeah.
It still sells. It does feel like an old school play style of storytelling. Like, yeah, they feel like they shot it like a play. I definitely feel like they borrowed elements from silent movies to do it.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. He's homaging a lot of that, but see, a lot of that is because he hadn't directed before, too. I
Right.
think why.
Well, and yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a pretty successful actor, so I think he'd been exposed enough to ideas and things. But he also, from what I read it was also limited by budget. Like Mitchum wanted to shoot in rural Appalachian locations. They just didn't have the fucking money.
You could tell they had just
So
enough.
yeah, they shot it kind of like a play, but they the way they lit it and the way they built the sets and the designed everything really lended to the film. I thought to selling the film and making it unique looking, making it reality but almost not reality. It felt like kind of like a sinister fucking fairy tale to me. You know, like a sinister who's the guy that Hans Christian Andersen story
or Grimm's fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
This is very dark to be, chasing after these kids in a movie from the 50s. Yeah,
very dark. And I mean, dude, when he's in the bedroom with her and she comes out to have sex with him and he's just completely changed as like we're starting to reveal his true self of who he is and how he's going to treat her, and then later on he stabs her and kills her. That's some great imagery and some great scenes. I thought
you see
awesome.
How a lot of things were inspired by this. You know what wouldn't exist without this? I think The Stepfather.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah.
Remember The Stepfather? Is the same thing in a way. He's not after money in that one, but it's the whole,
it's almost
infiltrate and take over the family unit.
Yeah. The Stepfather is almost just a retelling of Night of the Hunter in a weird way, without the setup of the he's a preacher type of thing or whatever.
Yeah, right. He doesn't have that slant. He's just crazy.
I thought Mitchum was fucking really good in this. He really chewed the fucking scenery when he's explaining his love-hate tattoos and the love-hate tattoos. I'm like, that's where that fucking comes from.
That's the iconic part. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy shit! I had no idea, and I'm pretty sure doesn't Meatloaf have those on his knuckles in Rocky Horror?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So it's even in that. Well, there's so much. This movie's almost 70 years old at this point, so it's been stirred so much into the pop culture consciousness that you don't even realize how much it's everywhere and it's been taken from. I think that took some of the impact away for me when finally having watched it is like, oh yeah, I see that this is the granddaddy, but my God, everybody fucking took from this, right? I mean,
everybody. Well, that shows its brilliance. Where it's like everybody's been influenced by this fucking thing to one extent or the other, and for good reason. The performances are solid. The production design's great. The camera work's pretty good. The way they decided to make the movie, like you said, it creates this sort of reality, but it's all just alternate. Like you could possibly see like a gnome popping up somewhere, or Grimm's fairy tale. It's like this guy's a sinister preacher, but he's an amalgamation of evil.
There's enough interesting things in it and iconic things in it, and like we've said before, movies are made up of moments that you remember, and I think that's what carries it overall. I'm glad we had watched things like Sullivan's Travels and stuff that show me how the different odd pacing of movies used to be and more novelistic. Like, and this is even based on a book, which made sense to me why suddenly in the last 100 pages, now there's 7 new characters that show up I'm supposed to care about. And here's Ruby, and she's hanging out with these teenage boys. And I'm sitting here going, why do I care that Ruby? What happened?
you don't care, but she's just the vehicle for Robert
I mean, I
Mitchum to
get
get
it. I get it. But
to get
yeah.
back into the family, right? Yeah.
There's a weird clunk to it in that respect. So I understand why critics originally and audiences were like, nobody seemed to care about this when it first came out, and then it started to get that slow. It found its audience over
Oh,
time.
it sure did. It sure did. It's like whatever happened to Baby Jane or something, where it's like at the time it came out, people were like, "What the fuck?" But then later on, everybody's like, "This is fucking brilliant." You know, it went to the UHF stations in the 60s or in the 70s and the 80s and found its audience, where these people were like, "This is fucking brilliant." And I think it is. I think it's brilliant filmmaking.
Well, there's enough pieces in it that prove that its worthiness and its inclusion in the annals of film history, definitely. But for me, I understand why this guy only made one movie, because this wasn't well received enough. And
Right.
And put him into that director jail. And
yeah, back then that'd kill your career too. Yeah.
Maybe it's a good thing, because what if he had made other movies and they weren't as good? It might make this one people might not care as much. They'd be like, oh, he was a one-trick pony because look, he made Night of the Hunter 3 more times, you know. But we'll never know. We'll never know, because he wasn't really given the opportunity to do another one. But he didn't need to do another one. He made his mark.
I think it was a little ahead of its time. The film definitely is dated because it's black and white, because of the way it's shot and some of the technical things. But
it looks like an episode of like Route 66 or something that's shot for black and white television. You know, everything's crisp and in focus.
Very crisp and in focus. Yeah, and it looks good. There's a shot where you remember when they're at the picnic, and he straightens the boy's tie, and they cut to him, and it's a close-up of him leaning down straightening the tie, but everything in the background is like perfectly in focus. I really wonder how they fucking shot that. Did they reproject that to get, because everything, I mean, he's in focus,
I think that was a reprojection.
people in the back are in focus. It's a really weird looking shot that's super effective.
I know what you're talking about. That looked like an early example of what De Palma liked to do, like in movies like Carrie, with that weird split screen, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a diopter.
No,
it wasn't a lens. It wasn't a diopter
version of that type of thing.
It was cool. It was just, I guess maybe it was just the lens that they used. Maybe they were able to get that depth of field to keep everybody in focus at the same time, or it was real projection. But it's a cool fucking shot amongst many cool shots in that fucking movie. You know, again, I go back to that stabbing, that great shot of him running up the stairs trying to get to the door before they close it on him in the basement. So many good fucking shots in this movie. I really love
about that stabbing. We don't see a stabbing because it's 1955, and then 5 years later, Hitchcock makes Psycho. That must have really fucked with people's minds.
Yeah.
If you put it in that context, where it's like, and you could tell they wanted to be Hitchcock here. Is what it felt like to me. But it just, you're not Hitchcock. It's like your Boondock Saints compared to the Quentin Tarantino. You're going to be remembered, and a lot of people are going to like it. But to me, it's like,
I feel like Hitchcock's a lot trickier. This is a pretty straightforward laid out film, just giving you the elements, and moving through them.
The creepiness goes of the.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. A lot of singing in this movie. A lot more than I expected, and some of it is fucking creepy.
Yeah,
like when Mitchum sings, he's standing outside of that house at the end where he's just basically singing to that old lady, and she's sitting there with a shotgun. It's like, what the fuck?
Am I watching Poltergeist 2? He's the creepy old man coming to the house looking for Carol Ann, is what it kind of reminded me of too. You know,
again, stolen from fucking the Night of the Hunter. It's insane how influential this movie is.
Now, this is way before the age of irony. So I wonder if how much religious, not subversiveness there really was in the script, because over time it's obviously transgressed to, this is another example of somebody who's not an American citizen making a movie about how Americans are. But in this case, kind of getting the whole fucking religious right thing a little on the head a bit, of like, see how entrenched they can get into this. And I'm sitting there watching the movie going, here we are 70 years later. Shit don't change, man.
Well, to me,
But is
it's
it
about.
making fun of it or is it just presenting it, right?
I think what it nails is the idea that people are, especially people in who don't have a lot of education or experience in that type of thing, who maybe, I don't want to say rural people or whatever, but this happens to deal with people who are rural, but people in general can be
Snake oil sale.
swayed.
Yeah.
They could be swayed by these type of people, these snake oil salesmen, these preachers who are basically, telling you about everlasting life in your soul and where you're going to be after you're dead and all these things, and offering you salvation and offering you,
It's Jim
you
Baker.
know, a way to get, it's like she says in the movie, she says to him at one point, how do I get clean? Right. And I think that's when somebody hits that nerve in a person, they have control over them. And if it's the wrong person, it's not going to turn out well. And with Mitchum, it turns out really bad, you know. Yeah, I think that's what it nails, is this idea that people can be susceptible to being buffaloed, especially by religion, because out of fear or ignorance or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
usually I think it's fear, ignorance, and also just like, people who have a lot of regrets in life, and they're like, well, how do I, get rid of that regret? How do I, move on from it? How do I feel better? How do I forget it? Whatever, I don't know. But to me, that's like, I watched my family. They were in God, man, my mom grew up in a kind of a cult. My grandparents went to a church that was so culty, it was ridiculous. Like, it was Christian, but they worshiped on Saturdays and they didn't eat pork, and all this weird type of stuff. I didn't eat pork at my grandparents' house ever. They never ate pork. That was just how they were. And it turned out that the guy who led the church was a real piece of shit who was screwing all the women in the church, and the church ended up splitting into different factions and
Mhm.
whatever. And it was weird and culty as hell. All because this guy is offering, that's the other thing. He convinced a lot of people like my mom not to go to college because he said, why bother? The world's going to end in 1977. He was a prophet of God and made a prediction
Uh,
that the world was going to end in 1977. And so why go to college? I mean, why bother? Just enjoy, be a servant of God and enjoy your as much as you can. And it's all going to, be done
mhm.
when Jesus comes back in 1977. So I don't know. That's
Yeah, it is interesting where, we come into this world not knowing anything, and yet we start listening to other people who also came into this world not knowing anything, and then we start all believing each other. It's really kind of, wild when you think about it.
But back to the movie. The old man song on the banjo reminded me of Big Rock Candy Mountain, which I laughed at. Um, uh, Shelley Winters has the shortest courting on record with Robert Mitchum. She's like married to that dude like a day after he shows up. It seems like.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels like there's, I guess it's first time director combined with letting just the camera run without slating it, the editor's worst nightmare probably. And so it feels to me like pieces are not there of the movie. But see, I'm looking at it through a modern film.
right.
Stand. It's like you'd
That's the other thing
seen
you have to.
Peter
Yeah.
Graves get hung. Suddenly
Mhm.
he's just dead and we've moved on. Suddenly she's married. What?
Right.
Did I miss something?
Right.
And so we get to about 50 minutes in, we've run out of story. So we have to
we
put the
haven't.
kids, well, we have to put the kids on the boat and send them off to the other people, and it's more novelistic that way. In a modern one, you'd have it just be about
Well,
the
it's
Shelley Winters and the kid at the house, right? They'd do the whole story in the 90 minutes there. Not saying that that's bad because they did it that way, but I
yeah,
think
but
that's an
then
older
I
way of
think if you
doing it.
do that, you lose it. I mean, the journey down the river. First off, journeying down the river in these type of novels and in these type of books and in the South is sort of like it's a metaphor. It's metaphorical to a certain extent. Journeying down the river, going up the river. These are traveling. It's very kind of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn in a way.
Mm.
It gets set up early on when they talk about the skiff, and there's Pa's skiff, and we'll drag it out of the water and we'll caulk it when it gets dry, and then so it's all been set up, and he takes the skiff and they, so I like that. It's not a sudden like he just finds a fucking boat, jumps in it with his, sister, and they're off and running, right? And I also like every time they seem to stop or find a place that they're just trying to rest, this dude keeps showing up.
Mm-hmm.
singing his fucking songs and shit. It's kind of eerie. It's really,
That's the
it's,
stuff where I
oh
can
my
see where people
God.
say it falls into horror. Yeah.
Um,
And
it's,
influences so much that comes after. Yeah.
it's almost like mini montages for exposition. Like they do a lot of mini montages for exposition. Bam, 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 bam. And then they land on 3 or 4 scenes. You know what I mean? Like the singing, the robbery, the thing with the kids, landed jail for a while. And then land back at the house where when he comes back for a while. And then these more expositions and these little montages, and then land at the river, and we'll watch him do the river for a bit. You know what I mean? Um, you hit daddy with a hairbrush is probably one of my favorite lines, along with I don't want no fudge.
Oh.
Uh, and then that woman saying shilly shally, and flapdoodle, and then
Mhm.
basically dogging her husband for being bad in bed. That was the other. Did you hear that when she was talking to the old lady at the picnic?
Mhm.
And she was just like, I never worried about that. Nothing never meant to me. I always thought about Cannon while it was going on. I'm just like, oh, dude, wow. um, yeah, I thought the use of shadow and light was superb. I thought it was really well lit. I thought it kept ratcheting up slowly. Um, I loved the shot of her dead in the water, the underwater shot. I thought that was really cool in the car.
Well, I understand its importance, but I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of, it was eminently watchable, but it felt like the shortest, longest movie I've seen in the longest time. Especially, like I said, when I felt like after he kind of Looney Tunes tries to chase the kids up the,
Dude,
cellar, it
yeah,
kind of stopped. The movie stopped, and then they end up with these new kids, and then eventually it made sense why they're doing that. But I was already kind of checked out at that point, and then it gets a little more religiously overhanded. Uh, Another Christmas movie. We seem to keep running into the holidays over and over again. And so
I
ultimately, and the older I get, the more like I tend to agree with critics at the time on things. So I didn't really, I understand why it became popular later and the moments of it that are important, but overall, I didn't really care for it that much. I don't think it's bad or anything, but I just didn't really,
I
get the
thought
hype.
I thought the imagery and the shot selection was damn near perfection. If you want to talk about a movie being art, this is art. I'd put it up against damn near anything you want to throw at it, and it'll hold up. It's 70 fucking years
Oh,
old, and
it's
it's
already
better.
held up.
It's
Yeah.
better than 95% of the trash that comes out now all day
Mhm.
long. It's gorgeous. It's sinister. It's fucking brilliant. Based on a true story
Yeah, that was
from the
kind of shocking
30s.
when I looked that up. Yeah.
I just couldn't take my eyes off it. It was so fucking good.
Well, you can't,
Um,
right? You can't take your eyes off of it. It's
no,
infinitely watchable.
it's very watchable. It's
It's
it's well
completely
fucking made.
watchable.
It's
It's eye
brilliant.
candy.
The eye candy is everywhere, and that's part of why it makes it a noir film, in my opinion. It's got the black and white. It's got the use of light. It's got the use of shadow. It's got the use of negative space. All those things that noir movies do that make them so fucking cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Now the
when that
interesting.
lady when that lady says, "Get moving or I'll get a switch," that old lady to those 2 kids, I was like, "Oh shit, I haven't thought about a switch since I was a little kid. I've had my butt spanked with a switch, and that shit's not fun." But I thought, "Ooh, damn."
Yeah, the
Uh,
interesting thing I think about it is, will I appreciate it more over time? Will
oh,
I come back
I
to it
definitely think I
later
will.
and
Oh, I
think
definitely think I
something
will.
different from it? Because it's very well possible, because there's things in it that kind of twist and turn. The further I get away from it and get away from my structure issues, the more the images and the certain things stick. And like we said, movies just being a series of moments, and this certainly has it. That this
I
could
was
very well be one of those that I look back and go, "Oh, I had a completely different opinion at the time." Yeah,
I
but I can
was
see why they teach this one. Yeah.
I was sure he was going to kill that old lady. Um, the music is the singing again. that when he shows up and he starts singing and she joins him in that song, that is fucking. I was like, I got chill. I was like, ugh. Can you imagine your a killer standing outside of your fucking porch and starting to sing, and you sing a duet with the motherfucker?
I don't think that Texas Chainsaw 2 could exist without this film, because Dennis Hopper is Robert Mitchum in a way. He shows up singing, bringing in the sheaves, very similar to this film. And they don't know what he's singing. So it's just weird how it's like all these things from it. And then here comes Hitchcock with Psycho 5 years later. And it's like, oh my God, film was getting weird at that time. So this must have...
It's great. It's artistic. It's fucking unique. It's trying to do things. It's reaching for things. It's so fucking well thought out. I love the quote, "It's a hard world for little things." I thought that was a great line. Couple things I didn't like. I didn't like that the kid at the end turned and cried over him. I know he's seeing his dad.
He's having his freak out. Yeah,
I know he's seeing his dad go down.
At that point.
Still, he should have been a little bit more relieved in that point. And there are two Looney Tunes moments in the film. Two just straight up fucking Mel Blanc Looney Tunes moments. And the first one you've already alluded to is getting his fingers caught in the door, and he does that. It's a Bugs Bunny scream. Yeah. And then when he gets shot, he does the same thing. But when I also love how they handle it, right? Because like once he gets shot, it doesn't. If this is a fucking movie done now, that old lady scene is 15 minutes long, and he shoots her and he stalks her and she shoots him, and then he disappears and he pops up again. The whole fucking thing, you know. It's like that Whitewater Rapids scene when the kids are going down the rapids in the boat. It takes 30 seconds. If it's shot now, that is a fucking 5-minute action scene where the little girl almost falls over. And of course, the doll definitely goes over, and the kid has to grab it at the last second with the money in it. You know, it's better this way. It's just better this way.
It is, but I still, not everything is for everybody.
Oh, I'm just giving you my reasons. Yeah. No, totally. Your reaction's your reaction. I get it. For me, I can't give it 5 stars because it's got a few flaws, but it's a 4-star movie for me.
Yeah, I give it 2. Yeah.
I mean, okay.
It just felt like I was watching an episode of Lassie or something,
Unbelievable. Okay. Yeah.
So
wow.
I kind of understood why it was panned at the time, but there's enough stuff in it that like I could never go below a 2 because that would be an insult to the film.
Well, I mean, a 2 is, a 2 is less than, in my opinion, 2.5 is like right in the middle, mediocre. A 2 indicates that the film is lacking in some way, and I don't think this film lacks. But hey, 2 is a 2 for you, buddy. That's fine. Totally good. All right, Before Sunrise. Here we go.
Criterion Collection. So
Yeah. Well, and
and I'm always the heretic on this stuff. A lot of people love things. I go to Letterboxd and I'm start trying to find people who have any sort of agreement with me. And I did find more of them than Fandango. Fandango, I'm really an outlier on. But this one, there are some people who kind of feel the same way with me on this one.
I don't know. I think it's I won't say anything other than you're wrong. But we'll move on. Before Sunrise, Richard Linklater. Here we go. Starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Is that her name?
Yeah. And speaking of movies, the more time goes past and the more you think about them. Here we're talking about Before Sunrise.
Yep. So the story is, let me give you the quick log line. I'll give you the story. A young man and woman meet on a train in Europe and wind up spending one night together in Vienna. Unfortunately, both know that this will probably be their only night together. Storyline. American tourist Jesse and French student Celine meet by chance on the train from Budapest to Vienna. Sensing that they are developing a connection, Jesse asks Celine to spend the day with him in Vienna, and she agrees. So they pass the time before his scheduled flight the next morning together. How do two perfect strangers connect so intimately over the course of a single day? What is that special thing that bonds two people so strongly? As their bond turns to love, what will happen to them the next morning when Jesse flies away? Shot in 1995. That's makes complete sense.
Yeah, they spent $2.5 million on it. and ended up making $22.5 million on it. So that's a pretty good return for a tiny little movie.
Well, this is. I mean, Ethan Hawke's pretty popular at the time. It says gross worldwide it made 6.5 million.
Oh,
So on IMDb. So
I'm looking at Wiki. Yeah. So
oh, okay. Maybe that's like video sales and
might
everything
be. Yeah.
too. Yeah. But I mean, you put Ethan in a movie. I think at this time you're gonna get the return on your dollar. This is back when that actually kind of mattered for small indie films. I don't think it matters as much anymore.
It said Linklater spent 9 months casting the film because he had trouble finding the right actors.
Interesting.
So I guess it just everybody kind of fell into where they were supposed to be, because then Ethan Hawke goes on to make how many more movies with Linklater after this? Quite a few. I mean, there's the sequels to this and Boyhood and
Boyhood. Yeah, that's the other one I was thinking
and
of.
the Newton Boys, maybe. I can't remember. But this is an interesting follow-up to Dazed and Confused, right? It kind of reminds me like where Kevin Smith made Chasing Amy as his third movie. It's this weird kind of understated little thing. Adrian described it as my dinner with Andre, but I'm like, yeah, but moving around. But it kind of reminds me of Slacker, but with a plot. His first movie.
I had a my dinner with Andre sort of reaction to it too. It's it's just so obviously just mumblecore.
Oh, it's one of the like
it's like the fucking height of mumblecore. Everybody fucking talks. These two just fucking talk constantly.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, guys,
it's a whole fucking movie.
Well, that's the whole movie.
It is the whole movie. It's 90 minutes of fucking dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a solid wall coming at you. My first thought was, why don't we have better train travel in this country? I love traveling by train. I've done it before, and I think it's America's biggest crime is that we don't have the ability. Like, I should have the ability to get on a train in Oklahoma City and hit Phoenix, or you should be able to go from Tucson to Phoenix easily, and then from Phoenix to LA and back, and things like that. You know, that should be a no-brainer, and it shouldn't cost you a fucking $1 million to do it either. But anyway, yeah. It was interesting, I guess. The meet cute happens 5 minutes into the movie. That's pretty early. Normally
they don't really dally around. Yeah, it starts on that couple, and then they have an argument. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he says to her is like, "I wonder what they were arguing about," or whatever. That's
right.
And the next thing you know, we're just off to the races. But yeah, it did remind me a lot of Slacker, his first movie, where it's just going from person to person doing a rant. But this time he has the two people doing the rants to each other. In pure 90s fashion, there's a lot of master shots or walk and talks where both of them clearly had to have all of their shit down, because if you fuck up, you got to start over again, you know.
I mean, you should call this Walk and Talk the movie.
Oh, yeah,
that's all it is. It's one fucking massive walk and talk, and interspersed with a few sets.
Yeah,
where they actually stop and sit down for a minute, because you know they can't, because you can't make out while you're walking, basically.
Yeah, they kind of like wander around and then they get back to their home base. One of the things that I find most interesting about it, that I always did when I saw it for the first time like 30 years ago, was Linklater, between this and Dazed and Confused, he seems to know how to capture that you're up all night and then the next morning vibe has started, like that real feeling of like I've been awake all night kind of by the end of it, and real life kicks back in, you know. I don't know. That's just what I got from those two anyway.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
And I remember when I first saw it in the 90s, it was just like, yeah, they're just fucking bah, 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 bah. It was just like, oh my God.
Those two don't fucking stop talking.
It was it's Kevin Smith, but like, we're going to go even more fucking, you know.
One of my notes is, where is it? One of my notes is, where is it? Because it's a Kevin Smith note. Yeah, this feels like I'm watching Kevin Smith on a first date with his wife, Jen. Like, I feel like that's what I feel like this is. You know, it's
weird how that stuff kind of fed into itself too, because Slasher leads to Clerks, leads to,
it's just, it was, for me, it was just too much. I mean, it was
Mhm.
just, I wanted something to break. It's like,
And you had never seen this before, right?
no, I'd never seen it before. It's like, I want something, it's like eating something that's really rich. You want something to break it up. Like you need something to go to break away from the richness.
It's kind of more of an
And
experiment.
this was just like,
than a movie.
no, more fucking dark chocolate, bitch, eat. And I'm just like, ah, fuck, I can't with this fucking movie anymore. I can't. And
Well, that's what a lot of critics
really,
thought at the time. It's kind of funny.
it really made it feel like it was 2 hours, 2:10. Like it was, it felt torturously long. It really did. I don't buy the premise of just like, oh, hey, I'm an American, you're a French girl, let's get a drink. And why don't you get off the train so I can multiple murder you in Venice? Congratulate, I
And
just,
she's the one talking about murdering him. Was the
I get it. But yeah, she gets off the train and she goes, what's your name? I mean, you don't want to know that before. Like, maybe if he asks you, you go, sure, what's your name? Let me,
Well,
maybe we should introduce ourselves before I decide to just leave the,
It
I
has
mean,
a
that
lot
that is a last known,
Yeah.
photo on a fucking subway type
It has
of
a lot of
situation.
overly romantic notions in it,
It does.
which is
Yeah,
weird.
very
that
much.
this turns into like this accidental trilogy where 9 years later they made another one, and then 9 years after that they make another one after that, and so you're visiting these characters at different times in their life. And this one, the older I get, looking back at it as, oh shit, when you're in your early 20s, you don't know anything. You think you know how relationships work and how the world works, and you're so certain of how things are going to be. And it's interesting in the sequels, especially when you get to the third one, how it reflects back. It actually makes the first movie a better film in a weird kind of way. So it's strange. But yeah, when this one came out, I thought, oh, okay, what a weird. I checked it out because I liked his other movies. I'm like, what a weird, probably singular piece of work, and he'll move on. And then strangely enough, they got back together and did a follow up, which is only like 80 minutes. The second one. And spoiler, in part 3, there's actually some more characters, so it's not all just people, two of them talking to each other.
I think it would have been better served if he had shot this movie, waited 9 years, shot the next movie, waited 9 years, shot the next movie, and then cut all 3 of them together into one fucking movie.
Well, in a way, that's Boyhood, which
right.
is another one of his weird experiments in film.
I get it, but it's just like watching somebody just, I don't know, like watching somebody punch a board over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, you're never gonna break it. Like, why are you punching the board over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
It's relentless in its premise and its one premise is, will they fuck or won't they? That's the premise. It's, I don't know. I found parts of it kind of cute, but I found it just, God damn!
It's not perfect.
I wanted something to cut away from just the dialogue for a minute and do something else, anything else, other than just. It had this pattern of like, I wrote it down. What was it? It was where is it? Why this? Why that? Personal story. Why kiss? What? Why this? Why that? More personal story. Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the movie is basically. It's just them basically asking each other questions about the world and talking about their personal lives and then making out and then stopping somewhere to, I don't know. And the wandering in the cemetery was kind of weird. I guess Europe's different, but like if you're wandering in a cemetery and here you're going to probably be asked like, what the fuck are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But instead they're just like walking around like, hey, dead people. And she's 13 when she died. And then they go to the park. And again, I guess it's different in America because they just lay there all night and get drunk.
Yeah,
in a public park.
And it is the almost 30 years ago too.
Yeah, and it is, again, it's Europe. I don't know what the social is. It cool to like in Europe just hang out in a park all night? I mean, maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, it
doesn't seem like it would be.
Linklater shot it in a different country, so both of them would feel like they weren't in familiar surroundings because he thought that would take away from it. They have to both be kind of isolated from what they're used to. Like if they'd made this in America, it would have a different vibe, right?
one of my notes is this seems like an excuse for Linklater to take a European vacation and have somebody else pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Where
And
he's
Adam
just like,
Goldberg along for the
I got
ride.
all these fucking locations I want to shoot at, and I got this idea for this movie, but really it's just so I can, after the success of Dazed and Confused, I can have a nice European vacation,
Mm-hmm. And to shoot this little two-hander here, which must have been easy and tricky to shoot all at the same time, I imagine. But if those two actors know their shit well, you can capture those takes pretty quick.
If you've got two good actors that are off book, I mean, it wasn't a complicated shoot. There wasn't anything super complicated about the sets or anything tricky in that regard, other than making sure you had permission to shoot the locations that you were shooting.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do anything tricky with the camera.
No, but they have to nail their performances. If that's
right, that's what I'm saying.
As long as they're off way that book and they're good actors. Talking,
that's not tough.
It's funny because Adrian's note was she wished they had cast somebody other than fucking Ethan Hawke. She thought that he didn't quite capture a likability factor enough that the character needed. And I'm thinking, I think the character was supposed to be a little unlikable on purpose, but
I felt the same way about her. I wish they'd hired a different actress. Yeah. Yeah. He's fine, I guess. I've never been a huge Ethan Hawke fan, but he's a serviceable
actor.
So
early on. I mean, they're kids,
I mean, he was in.
It's making a movie when you think about it. Everybody's so young here.
He was in Predestination, right?
Yeah, and that's like a different field of this, right?
He was good. Yeah, he was good in that. So he's a serviceable actor. He can pull the part off. This one, he just kind of seemed like a classic kind of American.
And I think he was supposed to be kind of the abrasive, overly cynical. And then we find out, well, yeah, he just broke up with his girlfriend like a day or so ago. No wonder he's pissed off when he doesn't want to talk about love and all that. And I mean, I know it's a little tropey, but especially the second time I watched it this week, it made more sense. Like my brain started to break up the rants, and then I started to process the rants better. Yeah.
If we go to another mumblecore guy who we've mentioned already, Kevin Smith, and we look at his relationship movie, which is Chasing Amy. I would much rather watch Chasing, which he also made on 10% of the budget before Sunrise.
They feel kind of a kinship in a way to me.
They do. They definitely do. I thought a lot about Chasing Amy while I was watching this.
Like they're trying to figure it out. Like, how do I make this relationship movie? Yeah.
This was such a letdown after Night of the Hunter. I watched them not back to back. I watched Night of the Hunter first, and then a couple days later I watched Before Sunrise, but I had just been kind of marinating in how fucking awesome Hunter was, and I put this on, and it's just it's like listening to two fucking small dogs just bark, just I'm like, God damn, take a fucking breath and try some acting, emote, look, and if they're not talking, then they've got these kind of puppy dog moony eyes at each other, and I get it, it's a romantic movie, but to me, this would almost work better as a fucking comedy, as like a rom-com.
Well, like we were saying, what section does it belong in? You have to put this
fucking
drama,
put Seth Rogen in the fucking Ethan Hawke role, and then put like Elizabeth Banks in the in the Julie Delpy role, and you've got a pretty fucking funny comedy.
That makes Before Midnight pretty different.
I'm sure, but I mean, I don't think at the time he made this, he was like 9 years later, I'm going to make Before Midnight.
I don't think it was Singularity, and then they had an idea to come back because they knew if anybody showed up again in 6 months. Because remember that they were like, we're going to fuck all that. Let's meet up again in 6 months. So do they or don't they? Well, I know the answer because I saw part 2, but
I guess they never made it to the play was one of my notes. And then later on, they call out that they didn't make it to the play, and I was like, okay, I'm glad you just did skip over.
And that was kind of the signal of, the night's over, the reality kicking back in, because they were kind of like out of time in their own little world together for a pocket. And then it's like, oh, now we're, that's the whole romanticisms about it.
Isn't he fucking broke? Like, but somehow they're in places where they're getting drinks and they're eating food.
Stuff costs money.
But he's fucking broke. And but then when they need it as a story device to get the bottle of wine, suddenly
they're out.
Now he's gonna beg for money.
Maybe by the end of the night, there's nothing left. But yeah, they
That's
don't really
weird.
address that very much. But he bought that pass, so
Well,
he could ride the
He
rail.
says early on he's basically out of money. He
Yeah.
says early on he's like, I don't have any more money, and I'm waiting for this plane flight, and then I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. So it was just, but yet every now and then he's like he gets to poet all of his change, and at that point he's out of money. He shrugs his shoulders like, here you go, dude, it's all I got. But yet later on he's drinking beers, he's eating food, and then finally he's begging for wine. It's like, are you broke or not, dude? Anyway, it's I love Linklater's films. I don't like this one very much at all.
And it's also
not at all.
interesting that they sprinkle in little things talking about 10 years or 20 years from now, what are things going to be like? And so, much like Star Wars, when we get to those, it's reflecting on the other decades as well. So it's pretty trippy. But I understand why you wouldn't necessarily care for this one. It's not universally loved or anything. It usually falls somewhere in the middle, but I think it's interesting to the rest of his work because it's like, oh, so this is where he went, and then he goes off to like Newton Boys and Bernie and all those School of Rock and stuff like that. So yeah, but it's like, okay, it's like he had an idea of like, I'm going to do Slacker again, but with kissing. And it says it was based on a personal experiences with him and the co-writer, which I think is somebody who is actor in Dazed and Confused, Kim Krizan. But apparently it was based on, like, he took a walk with a friend of his and they talked all night and into the morning, and it kind of gave him a movie idea of he wanted to make a movie like that. And obviously it churned into something else. But very early on, he was a very strange experimental filmmaker, probably more so than a lot of the other mumblecore people, right? They were more trying to make like direct, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and he's just making bizarro shit like Slacker and Waking Life, which also has Jesse and Celine in it briefly for some strange reason. Waking Life, that weird cartoon one he did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, as you were saying,
he's made some. He's made some very commercial films while also making some, some very interesting stuff. Like I said, I like him as a filmmaker. He tends to. It's like I was talking about Night of the Hunter. It took some fucking chances.
Yeah,
it really tried to. There was intent there, and
there's some things going on, and they're both different. They're both oddball movies.
For me, this one is just this one is just too much fucking. And I hate to say that because I write a lot of dialogue in my scripts, but this motherfucker's got too much dialogue.
No, that's what they said in the original.
There's just nothing else. I mean, I don't want to watch two people walk around a town for an hour and 40 minutes and talk. As much as now, unless the conversation is so scintillating and so interesting that I can't stop. That's why My Dinner with Andre is a good movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this it fails that. It starts to fall apart in points. Some of the personal stories are kind of boring. Some of the, again, it's that why this, why that. Why do you think? Why that? What about blah? Do you remember when? Throwing a little nostalgia there. And it just. The engine starts to sputter on it for you. About 30 minutes in, I was checking to see how much longer I had. Mm-hmm. And by 50 minutes, I'm like, fuck, I got another 50 minutes to go on this thing. Oof. And I was looking forward to the play because I was expecting it to be a spectacle that they would go to that would break up. That is like, oh, good, they'll sit in the dark and not fucking talk. Perfect. But no, even that, and I kind of wanted to see this smoking cow weird ass play that these Germans were talking about. It was like, that sounds interesting. Okay. Because I would have made sure to have taken her to that. Like, we got to go see this shit. This is going to be wild. Starts at 9:30. We'll be out of there by 11. We can't skip this. This is going to be great. But anyway. Nice pink lips. That's my favorite quote. Favorite quote from this film.
Oh, yeah.
Nice pink lips.
The guy who writes them the... Was that for the guy who writes the poem with the milkshake in it?
No, she says that to him when they're in the bar and she's like, I'm going to call my friend in Paris. And then
when they're doing that part,
and she's like, he has nice pink lips. I was like, okay. All right. Sure. Nice pink lips. Interesting.
So
Say
this
that to a
was,
girl and see if you can get slapped.
this was the third and fourth time I've seen this. I saw it in '96 probably on video, and then I saw it around 2013 when I realized they had made a third one. And now revisiting it yet again, it's very strange how, to me anyway, Richard Linklater is some kind of weird master of time with his films. And as time passes with them, and a lot of his movies are about time actually, I get completely different reads from them when I used to. This movie has completely changed for me every time I've watched it. When I watched it originally, I had your opinion, almost to a T. And now, after all these years later, it just hit me completely different to where I was like, was that even the same movie? I don't know how that works. Maybe it's because I've seen the other two and it changed my opinion a little bit. But if I try to look at this as a singularity, I can understand why it's too much talking. But I don't mind it.
I mean, it's going to be a singularity for me. I have no intention of watching the next two films.
And it's a Mo Henry movie.
Well, fuck. Good for that. Good for her. But yeah, I don't. I mean, unless I'm forced to on this podcast, I probably will not be watching the other two films. It just wasn't for me. You know, I like mumblecore. I like Linklater. I like that time period in filmmaking. I even kind of like, you know, I like the balls of making a film that really isn't about anything other than these two people.
And the other two aren't this over again. They are a little different.
I liked the concept a lot. I think he
Mhm.
failed in execution.
Yeah, he opens it up.
Really failed in execution.
Yeah,
You know,
so-
and for 2.5 million, what else are you going to do but to put two people in front of a fucking
Mhm.
camera and have them talk? You know, that's about your only option. Especially when you're shooting in Europe and you're shooting on limited budget, you're paying everybody. So I don't know. Yeah.
All right. So what are you going to give this one?
I'm going to give it 1.5 stars.
1.5. All right. I
Yeah.
give it a 4.
Oh my god. Wow. No.
Yeah. For me, it really hits a lot of relationship stuff correct from my own personal experiences. But I understand everything is different. Every people are all different, and they get different things out of things. But what I find interesting about both of these films is, I think if I continue to revisit them, I will get a different read from them every time I watch both of them. I think Night of the Hunter is going to hit me different when I watch it in 5 years, and I bet this will hit me different if I watch it again in 20. So
I don't think this movie's going to hit different for me. Honestly, I can't get past its flaws to be able to enjoy it. Mainly, like I said, great concept. I get what he was going for. I feel like it really needed to be a comedy. It needed to be funnier and have these humorous notes along with the romanticness and the poignancy that he put into it. Would have been nice. But instead, he just went kind of straight, like you said, slacker with a budget, mumblecore.
well, I don't think he
Two people in front of a camera. Look
like,
at me, I'm Richard Linklater. Look what I can do. I can put two people in front of a camera for an hour and 40 minutes with dialogue, and you'll watch it. You know, well, I did watch it, but I'm not going to watch it again.
Do you think you would have had a different opinion had you watched it in the 90s?
Yes. In fact, that's a note I had. Actually, in 95, I probably would have been in love with this movie. I would have been like, it's fucking brilliant, all for exactly the reasons I stated, for his attempt, for, you know, making a movie that's basically just two people on the screen. All the ball, it's ballsy. Like I said, concept ballsy, execution lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I would have forgiven that in the 90s because as a young kind of trying filmmaker, I'd have been like, but man, he tried this and that, and it's this, and look at that, and look at all this dialogue they had to, and fucking all the walk and talks and all that shit, and, you know, and I would have been really into that. Now I'm like, I know the tricks of the business and how you shoot movies, and I know where he cut the corners, and I know where he probably should have edited himself a bit, and he didn't. So for me, it just doesn't work as a film. It works as a cool concept.
Yeah.
In fact, all three movies, I guarantee you, if I'm forced to watch the other two, I'll be like, yep, okay, I get it. It works as a cool concept. It's probably not going to work for me as a trilogy, as a set of movies, right?
Well, it's nice that you don't know what those other two movies are. So if they ever do creep up, it'll be a surprise. because he didn't make
Yep.
the same movie 3 times at least. So
Well, I stayed away from looking at the others because I didn't want to ruin anything, because I figured you might be like, all right, well, I'm still going to make you watch the trilogy because I want to see what you think about the other 2 movies. And that's really what this fucking program is about.
well, yeah,
It's not
because I'll
about
sit through stuff too, you know.
right. It's not about whether or not I'm going to like
Well,
the
makes
movie.
makes an interesting episode.
It's
Sometimes.
about, I want to hear you. Sometimes I want to hear you for 25 minutes just scream about what a terrible fucking movie it was. like that last Fandango. Man, we got off that call and I was laughing so fucking hard because it was just like, man, I liked that and he hated the shit out of it. Like he would have just taken that movie in the desert, shot it in the head, and buried it, man, and just fucking we don't talk about that, you know. So that's what this whole show's about, and I think it's
brought a movie on that I say don't watch. So
right, but it's even better when I'm gonna try and give you more blind picks because I think it's even better when it's something you haven't seen, which is a lot more fun.
yeah, and one of the reasons I like the Sunrise movie so much is because I just like the dynamics between the sexes, and I feel like it's more just. Yeah, it reminded me of something I would have tried to write back when I was that age, but I didn't have enough life experience to reflect back on how naive people in their 20s could be, but at the same time still kind of know some things. I don't know. But
the writing felt a little heavy-handed. I think he gets better as he goes along.
He does get better, yeah. It's not
but,
his best
you know,
film by a long shot, no.
He's really pushing that I'm an independent woman, I'm an independent European woman angle. With the whole I'll kill you and I'll eat you. All the women would just eat the man and all this type of thing. And I'm like,
it's like I shouldn't have told him that story. Now he's going to be completely
okay,
freaked out.
sure, I guess.
You know, the second time I watched it this week, I noticed something I didn't notice the first time. How kind of morbid it was. How they kept talking about death, and then they go to the. I'm like, oh yeah, they keep bringing up the end of life quite a bit in that movie. I didn't realize that as much. But he likes to talk about time.
Yeah, now that you pointed out, yeah.
So anyway, will this be the end of the near 3-month streak where I haven't really cared for the movie that Cliff has given me? The last one I really liked was like Get Out. There's been a few where I was like, that was over, hey, like Addams Family or whatnot. But there hasn't been one where I'm like, oh yeah, that's fucking awesome. It's going to happen at some point.
I was sure it was Night of the Hunter, but
I thought it might be too. But not a bad movie. I would never say that's a bad movie.
No, I hear
me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you got for me next week? I'll keep subjecting to shitty movies. We'll see what we can do.
Hey, let's see what happens. We're both Dr. F, right? We subject each other to experiment each week.
Yeah. I would prefer to be TV's Frank. I would prefer to be TV's Frank.
You want to be the TV's Frank?
Right. Yeah, I kind of
do. This is a relatively new addition to my list, although the rest of my list is older movies, because this is one I found a copy of recently, and I was like, oh, I remember this. This is from when I used to watch movies on IFC in the early aughts, and they'd show all these weird films. And I revisited it a few years ago, and I still thought it was quirky enough. So when I found it again a few weeks ago, I was like, well, let's just rocket this to the top of the list, shall we? It's Steve Buscemi's directorial debut, I believe.
Living in Oblivion?
Maybe it's another movie he made. But I know he directed this one. I think you're right. Oblivion's the first one, probably. This one's from the year 2000. It's called Animal Factory. It's Willem Dafoe. He's back again with Edward Furlong and Danny Trejo. It's a prison drama. And I remember it being just fucking weird. So let's see if this is interesting or not. But I remember it having enough quirks. It's not a perfect movie, but there was some bizarreness going on. So let's switch it up a little with a prison film called Animal Factory from the year 2000, directed by Steve Buscemi.
Okay,
why?
I have two movies here I want to give you. I don't know which one. I'm having trouble. So say up or down.
Let's go up.
All right. Your movie is Get Him to the Greek.
Hey, that's a good follow-up to My Chauffeur, and I've never seen it.
Right.
But I saw the first one, the Sarah Marshall, right?
Mm-hmm. But by the way, just because you brought that up, one of my favorite scenes in film, one of the most uncomfortable, one of the things where I was laughing and I was uncomfortable at the same time, which is very rare to laugh and be sort of awkwardly uncomfortable is watching Jason Segel come out of the room to surprise his girlfriend as she comes back. Remember, he's just completely naked, and she breaks up with him, and he's crying while he's naked, and it's hilarious, but at the same time, you're like, dude, put something on.
How perfectly fitting that maybe one day you will need to watch the other before movies that you bring something like that out. So, all right.
Well, I don't want no fudge.
You ain't getting no fudge or whatever, but you can have the fudge you want, And then she turns on him like that as soon as he becomes evil. Burn the motherfucker.
Burn the motherfucker.
It's like, oh man, these people are crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm the cow.
I'm the rooster prick.
All right, Marty, I'm going to shilly-shally my way out of here. All right. Let's see. So it's Animal Factory and Get Him to the Greek next week.
Yeah, that's a change of pace right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, then we'll see you then.
Enough of this Criterion nonsense.
Enough of this serious film nonsense where we talk shit about it. Next week, man. See ya.
Later. Au revoir. Support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.